You gotta understand, the enemy's not the man, it's the mindset. Killing my people that's in a similar to COVID. No sense, how you take a life without a motive? Tired of seeing protest, dying to see progress. For the person that'll win in the end, doesn't really matter what's the color of the skin. When the bullets scatter, when they bleed from within, haven't we shed more blood than these tears?
We've talked a lot about some of the challenges, right? And then, like we said, we wanted to identify some of the problems that we wanted to tackle. When you get to solutions, obviously there's already some really good work being done already, whether it's in our own communities, whether it's in the world as a whole. So one thing I would love to know is if you've seen anything that encourages you or inspires you about something that's going on in the world. And it could be as big as policy changes or protests. It could be as small as an interaction you saw at the grocery store. But what's something that you've seen recently that's really inspired you to think, wow, maybe this could work. Maybe the world isn't that dark and scary after all.
You know, I know for me, my sister got married last year, and she married a great guy, born in Zimbabwe, grew up in the UK, and so for him, coming to the US, he felt that he was dealing with a double negative. One, he's foreign, and two, he's black. And so he had especially given his image of what it would be like to live in the US as a black man was very one-dimensional, because it was not based off any personal experiences or anyone he personally knew. It was purely off of what he saw in the news, et cetera. And for him, the consciousness of that kind of awareness really started to come about around the time of Ferguson. And so that was what crafted his perception. And for him, since he's come here, some things have been affirmed about the problems that we have in our society. On the other hand, there's been some affirmations of some of the opportunities that's there. One of the things that was really cool experience for he and I, a shared experience, was about a week into the protests in Columbus, he and I went together. He's a professional drummer, and he took a snare drum down. And so he's got that, and I had a great big 4x6 flag on a 10-foot pole, and together we're participating in this. For him, as he's going through the process for his residency right now to and eventually become a citizen, and I'm his sponsor for that. I got to be with him as he got to exercise his First Amendment right for the first time, and for the things that we know that are wrong, we have the opportunity to do something about it. Like you said earlier, it's on us, right? Mm-hmm. And that's for any problem, right?
Right.
It's on us to do something about it. And so that's one of the cool things for me, is someone getting to experience that for the first time, that they have the opportunity to do something.
Hopefully this doesn't come out callous but for me, as she alluded to, I've been working in criminal justice reform for a very, very long time. And the death of George Floyd was extremely instrumental, inspirational to me, because it created something that I have never seen in my life. I grew up here in Mansfield, but I spent my adult life in New York City. So I was there when Sean Bell died. I was there when Diallo died. I was there when Eric Garner died, in pretty much the same manner that Floyd died. And there was never the outcry. There was never the movement that was created with Floyd. I am a man of faith, and I believe everything happens for a reason. I believe there's a purpose for everything, and I believe Floyd's death purpose was to create what is happening now. So if you ask me what inspirational happened, him sacrificing his life was extremely inspirational to me, because it has created this movement. It has created an avenue for me to create this code of conduct that we're trying to put in place here in Mansfield, and it's created a lot of different things across the country in this criminal justice world that we've never had the opportunity to do. So for me, that's what it is.
I would have to say with those young women uptown, remember the protest that they had? When I seen those 17-year-old young ladies, I said, we still have a chance. If young people, I said, when young white kids are tired of seeing blacks and they don't want to organize that, I said, we might have an opportunity. God might not wipe us out too soon.
When this whole thing blew up a couple weeks ago, my son and another former student of mine, African-American student of mine, actually got together and they started a Facebook group called Bridge the Gap. And for me, one of the cool things was they asked me to be one of the moderators because they had faith in me, and that there have been people on there that didn't like some of the challenge that I've put out, and I like to ask a lot of questions, and I'll ask some very difficult questions on that forum. And sometimes people don't like difficult questions because difficult questions make you think about difficult answers. And I think that's what we need to do, ask difficult questions so that we can find the difficult answers.
Yeah. I mean, if you put on a pair of pants that don't fit you, that are uncomfortable, you're going to change them. So to that,
or change you. You might have to lose some weight.
Something's going to happen.
Be the problem.
Something's going to happen.
Sometimes
so
we got to change too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like hard questions are definitely needed. Uncomfortable questions are definitely needed because it's that uncomfortability that creates change.
And that's a delicate responsibility, right? The conversation, especially in the first week after, not after Floyd's death, but after the public awareness of Floyd's death really began to rise. The number of difficult conversations that I had just alone with family and with friends was immense. And there has to be an element of being able to have those conversations. And for those of us who ourselves are at different levels. I'm talking to us as white people who are at varying levels of awareness or wokeness, right? We're at varying levels based off our own experiences, which are extremely varied. There's a delicate balance in how we pursue those conversations with our family and our friends as well, because you may agree on virtually everything, but if you're not speaking the same language, it's going to be thrown off. And a great illustration of this was you had Rush Limbaugh, right, is about as far right-wing as they go, got on the air, and he requested to go on air with the Breakfast Club, and to their credit, they had him on. Yeah. It was a half-hour segment. About halfway through, the whole thing just started falling apart because they're not speaking the same language. Now, they also have some legitimate disagreements with each other, but they're not even speaking the same language. I was talking to a friend of mine I've known for years. The guy's actually running for judge right now. And he said something that just blew me away. I had no idea what he thought about certain race relations whatsoever. He said something to me that broke my heart when the words came out of his mouth, because I think more highly of him than this. He told me that it's not in the black community's culture to work hard. Broke me up, because I think this guy's a veteran. He served in the Army, he saw combat. And when I think of him, he's a lawyer. He's got an education. I think more of him than that. And to hear him say that broke me. So then I've got that option in that moment. What do I do right now? Do I tell him you're wrong and you're a racist and burn that relationship, or do I correct the record and tell him I think you're wrong, and ask some questions? Because again, he had some experiences that made him that way too. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up asking questions. And I'll tell you what, it was the hardest thing I did, not to tell him off, because again, sometimes the part of being a friend is to tell someone off, right? Yeah. But we got to the end of that conversation. We're about to hang up. We ended up talking on the phone for an hour and a half. And right before we hung up, he told me, he goes, you know what? You made me think about some things I haven't really thought about. Can we talk about it again?
And if you had done the righteous slap down,
which I wanted to.
And that's the thing. I mean,
Right.
It's like 20 years we worked together, and he's African American. And we usually work together to do the salt and pepper thing, because we want people to understand the white and black interrelationship, that we're breaking all kinds of stereotypes. But he started the White Ally Project, and I mean he's a genius. He's a very smart person who has a big picture framework in mind. But, you know, eggheads and academics, and I put myself in that category, the greatest problem there is that there's amazing work there that nobody knows about, right? This is one, and also we got to change that. And I'm sorry, America, we can have two thoughts in our head at the same time that contradict each other. We can do it. I have a faith. Like we have to, like that's one of the things, like we got to raise up a little bit, and it's hard, but the White Ally Project notion, and I'm like, he really want, you know, we were talking about bringing it here, and, you know, people can practice it all over. It's got like, you know, it's got a method that he's developed, and it's about reflecting, empathizing. But it's largely about white folks who might be considered more progressive, communicating with folks who are racism skeptics or have, you know, and it's hard to break it down that way, but, you know, I'm sure, at least from what everybody said, and at least the white folk, you know, here, you've done that a lot. You know, you've had to communicate to folks because you're in those spaces. Because I think of my family, and if you're watching, we need to work on things. But that's why the whole thing is like going home at holidays and those difficult conversations where, again, because most often that's part of whiteness, is it like, we don't talk about race, we don't talk about money, we don't talk about the things that you know, we need to talk about for things to move forward. But White Ally Project is just one aspect of it. And that's, you know, when you say things that inspire, I get so crazy because like I'm like, you know, the anti-racist Frankenstein, Mansfield, you made me, I'm coming back to get you, you know, and I'm like, people, when they look at me, they're just, I'm like, you don't know. And my father was a big, you know, he modeled for me what I wanted to see in the world. And I know it didn't work for everybody, but at the core element, like that's one of the things that you have to do. And he lived a life where he, you know, I joke I'm like the 2.0 version of him, where I went and got the egghead degree about the things that I saw, you know, in him playing out here. And I guess that's the thing I just think about with Mansfield. There's a part of me who's just like, let us break the mold. We've been 40 years behind the national average of like social change in race relations. Let's just slingshot forward. We can do it, you know, but we have to work together more, and also realize, like, you know, I know I'm going to piss people off with some of the things I'm doing, but that's part of like the responsibility. I'm not trying to, but sometimes you got to come in and drop a little shock action, you know, and shake it up.
How do we get people to work with us, or to get people to let us work with them that have a different political affiliation?
That's
you
a
got a
hard
D
one.
or an R. The D won't work with the R won't work with the D, but there's things that they agree on. And that's what we work on. And that's something that's very close and near and dear to my heart, is figuring out how to get the D's and the R's to work together on CJR. I mean, I'm passionate about CJR. You know, Micah's working on CJR as well, and it's something that we're very passionate about. And we're just trying to figure out how to get people to work together on something we have in common. Frederick Douglass said, "I'll work with anybody to do right and no one to do harm." So can we just get people to work together on the stuff that we agree with? Let's fight about the other stuff later, but let's solve something.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, as the politician in the room, as I said, I grew up here in Mansfield, but I spent my entire adult life in New York City. Very different than Ohio, extremely different. And when I came back, I have a New York City mindset. Now, I'm in New York City. I am considered more on the moderate side. New York is very progressive, very liberal. And when I came home, I came back saying the same exact things I've been saying for the last 10, 15 years. But here, I am a super progressive. And me in particular, because I haven't changed who I am, because I haven't stopped speaking about the things that I've been speaking about, I've run against what you are alluding or speaking about, and the philosophy differences between the two. There are, and I can only speak for me, but there are people who, regardless of what it is that I'm saying, because of my previous statements, won't even listen to anything that I have to say. You know, so what you're speaking about is, I wish there was a easy answer to it, but what I've learned, and this is my first this is my first jump into politics, my first public office role. What I have learned is people in politics, now when you're speaking to just regular people, it's different because you're not speaking to anyone else. You're just speaking about yourself. But a R is speaking to other R's. So he can't go too far over because he's going to upset those other R's. So I've learned it is, until we change the mindset of the masses, it's going to be very difficult to change those 8 people who are in the room with a R or a D behind their name. I don't know how we do it, but
I think we do it one conversation at a time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You having coffee with a young black man from downtown, me having coffee with my son, and spending hours and hours. I've got 4 white sons, I've got 1 black son, and we sat down and we talked about all this. And I asked them, I said, how do you see Vince? They said, he's my brother. I mean, he's on my life insurance policy, for crying out loud. I mean, he is a full-fledged member of my family. Right. And so when we can get people to look past it and have these conversations, it's a generational thing. Yeah. I'm going to teach this generation, every person in this generation I can find, I'm going to teach them. Right. So that, and I told my son, it's your job to teach the next generation. You teach your kids. Mm-hmm. And let them teach their other kids. I'd say, you pass it on. He said, I'm going to pay you back someday, Dad. I said, no, you pay it forward. Right. I don't need your money. Right. I don't need anything from you. Right. I didn't take him in to get anything. Right.
Well, I think that's, and maybe this might sound a little bit like I'm in disagreement, and I don't mean it quite that way because I've seen what you're talking about. I don't know that the divide is as great as we all think it is, though, because I think that there are enough underlying agreed principles that are somewhat universal. I think that the vast majority of Americans would agree that the law is supposed to apply uniformly to everyone, no matter what their race or gender is. It doesn't matter, that it is supposed to be equal. I think that just about every single American would agree that there's supposed to be an equal opportunity for everyone. I think that where we run into our mistake, the greatest mistake, is because of everything else. Let's take race out of the picture. Let's take all the other, let's say that we're at a political buffet and we pick and choose our issues. We've decided to demonize anyone who disagrees with us on, say, 2 or 3 of those issues and say, no, that doesn't agree with me. And so, no. And then we have done that to such a great extent that we've gotten into our own echo chambers. We don't even speak common language anymore. We say things that we know what they mean. And, my buddy over here, he knows what I mean because, we're in agreement here. We go to the same part of the buffet, and so we're in that same place. And I see this happen all the time in Columbus in the State House. I know almost every single legislator here in Ohio. And I watch them do it. People I see that are good people, and they've got both letters after their names. Good people. And some of them have even done it. They all get in their own echo chambers. And I hear them doing where they use it doesn't matter who they're talking to, they just use their same thing. And I'm fortunate enough to work for an organization that more and more we're working with people on both sides of the aisle. And so I've gotten a little bit more used to hearing it. So we talked earlier about that visceral response to the term white supremacist, right? Fortunately, I don't quite jerk anymore, right? So I at least to be able to hear past that first phrase. But I don't think the divide is that great. I think that the divide is that communication. And that's where what Ray's talking about, I think, comes in. Being willing to have those long, hard conversations to find that common ground.
Micah, I want to riff off of that and ask everybody a question, which is, what do you wish the other side would understand about you? Or someone you disagreed with? What would you want them to understand about you?
Well, as far as what he was saying about the hard worker, that blacks are not hard workers, most of us are. Most of us don't want anybody to give us nothing. Most of us want to earn it. One of the things, my stepmother, my father passed away 3 years ago, but when we was going through that incident with the building, my stepmom said he fights for everything. He knows how to fight. He works for anything that he wants, and he doesn't want you giving him nothing. And so folks need to understand that. Most of us, I would have to say most of us just like, Brother Davenport, and we want to work for our stuff. We don't want you to hand it to us, because when you work for something, you feel, man, I accomplished that thing. And no one gave it to me. No one gave me because I was a young black man and they just wanted to help me up, so to speak. And so that's one of the things I want people to understand. For me, yeah, I may have come from the gutter, but I worked to get out of the gutter.
I would say I want them to realize that if I want to work with you or want you to work with me, it's not because I have an ulterior motive. I really want to accomplish something. I really want to see a better criminal justice system. And I'm hoping that we get to talk about CJR tonight, because I think it's got to start there.
Mm-hmm. No, and just to, because he touched on it, but when you spoke about what law is supposed to be, it is supposed to be colorless, and it's supposed to be, it's supposed to be blind. Law is supposed to be blind, and I believe we actually have a misconception in terms of our criminal justice system in the color that it sees. It does not see black or white. It does not see brown. It does not. What it sees is green. Green is the only color that our criminal justice system sees. So when two people do the same exact crime and one has to have a legal aid who has a caseload of 13 other cases and whose job is to plead that case out, versus that person who has a few dollars and can get a lawyer, who can focus on solely that case and is looking at precedents and is looking at ways. That is where the disparity comes in, and that is where mass incarceration is able to take effect. And I'm like you, I am hoping we get into criminal justice, because that is the heart of everything we're speaking about here. In my belief, criminal justice reform is the only way to create what we're trying to create. I mean, again, these are my personal ideas and personal beliefs, but I am with you, and I am hoping we can get into that discussion.
Well, I don't know who the other side is, to tell you the truth. I'm kind of a man without a tribe right now. In that, so I don't know. When I say, to answer your question, I don't know who the other side is for me to direct that at. But I guess if I were to say that there is that divide, and to talk to kind of people on both sides, for people who have come up left of center, I don't assume that everyone right of center is racist. They might have a different definition of racism, but that doesn't mean they don't agree on the underlying principles. It took me a while to get to where I am about my awareness, and I still got ways to go. I know that, and that's why I seek out conversations like this. I'm learning tonight, and I continue to seek that out. For those who, like me, have come up right of center, I guess what I would say to them, and what I wish that they would realize, is that it's okay to listen to somebody and to ask questions, to ask someone that you think disagrees with you, to ask them, what do you mean by that? Right. Why do you think that? What if you're wrong? And find out what are the underlying assumptions or experiences that have created that in the first place. It's going to take work from both sides, but for me, I feel caught in the middle, and I think there's a lot more people like me who feel caught in the middle, because we know that everyone that is on one side, they're not all bad.
Right.
And we're looking at people on the other side and going, oh wait, they're not all bad either.
Right.
What's difficult about conversations like this and conversations like that? What makes it difficult? Why is it not so easy to do that? Because it seems so simple, right?
Sometimes people don't want to. They don't want to reveal their own issues. I mean, a lot of times you reveal the dark secrets in the family, because racism starts at home. A kid, from the time he's born, he don't know about black, or she don't know about black or white or any other race. But as they grow, father tells them, now those people are underneath you. They're only 1/3 of a human being. You are superior to them. And never forget that. And see, that's taught at home. But once that young man or that young lady grows up and starts understanding that They want the same things in life. They want nice house, nice cars, send their kids to college, military or whatever, and live in a nice home. See, when you start digging into conversations like this, like you said, when you get with the family, you start finding out who's really, if you have that open mind, and some of your relatives have that old, what we would like to, don't want to say, slave master mentality. You know, oh, Davenport, he's a good old boy. Taking money underneath your wing, but if you saw me, I'm like, oh, that Lamont, he's no good. Because we have our favorites, it's like a slave master. Yeah, I got some black friends. Yeah, I'm sure they're your best buddies. But if I'm not, I don't know you, we don't know you, so, you know, I don't know you and you don't know me, so you're going to look at me like he just no good somebody. I see a lot of people, I walk in the store, I'll dress like this, or I'll wear some, because I've been cutting grass, because I like to cut grass, it's my hobby, and I look like a bum. And they'll look me down. But then if I come looking like him, because I got a full of closets just like he do, suits, oh, he's a very important young black man. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? You get people want to shake your hand, meet you. Hey, you look. Because the way you dress tells people who you are. And they don't even know I'm a pastor. I can ride in my beat up truck, but they don't know that I own 4 more vehicles at home. I have a classic 65 Impala that my father left me before he died. I have a Tahoe, my wife has a vehicle. And then I have another car that I just want to get to my daughter. But I want the same things as you and you and you in here. I want that American dream. And I did it the right way to get it.
Yeah, that dream's crumbling, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other part. I mean, you know, just in case we thought there was a bright cloud, let me destroy it. But I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think of what Alomar has said also, where it's just like, you know, what people don't know about me. I don't know. I guess the thing, you know, sometimes like what I've been disheartened by is the total lack of what we might call any public leadership that's happened in Mansfield. And I say that with the idea of like, occasionally politicians are leaders, but not always, you know. But there's still like an expectation of that. And I think about, and you know, geez, the PR, the partisanship, you know, whew. I mean, it's just, I mean, like I have worked around it and with it my whole life, but I'm like, Mansfield, you win. You're winning. You're winning the, like, just the lockdown. Because, like, the task force idea that has been proposed, like, I'm part of the group that came up with this, and it's gotten, like, in a million years, I never thought there'd be this reaction to it, because I was like, this is the easiest route. You know, like, this is the safest thing. This is, like, a chance for all of you folks who didn't say a damn thing when this man, you know, and I hear you, because it's like George Floyd's daughter, you know, even said that, like, Daddy's life is gonna, like, that broke my heart too, because it's like he's gonna make a difference. But I guess the thing when you say criminal justice and, you know, more than anything, it's like all of these things, it's hard to say just one thing, but the fact that in a heartbeat, because of these histories of not understood and unchecked racism, means that someone is going to die because of blackness, because of being black in that moment. And everything feeds into that. You know, that is the emergency, right? And that all these other systems, we gotta be ready to go.